In a world where mermaids are hunted, ruthlessly harvested, and sold to the highest bidder, their flesh, a delicacy for the rich and powerful, how many more must drown in darkness before the sea cries out for justice? The sea was calm that night. The moon shone on the dark water, silver and quiet, as if nothing bad could ever happen there. But below the surface, a mother mermaid held her 3 daughters close. She hushed their whispers, telling them to stay very still. They were hiding in the rocks, hoping the humans wouldn't find them. She knew the hunters were out. She'd heard the oars scraping over the waves, the creak of wooden boats. Lanterns swung from their sides, throwing light across the black water. Her daughters were so young. The oldest was just big enough to swim fast, the youngest 2 still clumsy with their little tails. They didn't really understand why they had to hide. But she did. She had seen what humans did to mermaids. They called them fish. They cut their tails for jewelry, sold their flesh in markets. She had seen the blood in the water before. She had seen mothers screaming for lost children. She refused to let that happen to hers. She stroked their hair and whispered, "Close your eyes. Don't make a sound." But it was too late. A net dropped from above, heavy with iron weights and magic charms. It sank fast, faster than they could swim. It closed around them before she could even shout. She fought it, twisting, pulling with all her strength. She screamed at her daughters to swim, to get away. "Go. Go now." Their tails thrashed wildly. The oldest daughter slipped free at the edge, her eyes wide with terror and tears. She turned one last time to look at her mother, then fled into the black water. The mother felt relief and heartbreak at once. But the other 2 were trapped with her. They cried, wrapping their arms around her, tiny fingers digging into her skin. "Mama, Mama, don't let them take us." She held them tight, heartbreaking. Above, human voices shouted. Lantern light stabbed through the water. She saw the hunters' faces, cold, greedy, eager. She whispered to her daughters, "Close your eyes. Don't look. Mommy's here. I've got you." They buried their faces against her chest, sobbing. The net jerked upward. They broke the surface in a shower of foam. Salt spray burned her eyes. She heard laughter. A harpoon plunged down, striking her side. She twisted to shield her daughters. Pain exploded through her ribs. Blood poured into the water, turning it black. Her girls screamed. "Please," she sobbed at the men above. "They're just babies. Don't hurt them." But they only laughed. "Babies fetch more gold," one man said. Another leaned over the boat rail, grinning. "Rare. Exotic." She tried to hold them tighter, but the net was too strong. They ripped the girls from her arms. She screamed until her voice cracked, raw with agony. Her daughters cried for her, reaching out with tiny hands as they were dragged aboard. "Mama, Mama." She reached back, blood dripping from her fingers, but she couldn't save them. The oldest daughter, the one who got away, floated far out in the dark sea. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. She saw it all. The men on the boat cut her sisters open like fish. She heard her mother's last sobs turn into silence. The ocean went quiet. The surviving daughter wept alone in the cold black water. She was just a child. But that night, she made a promise in her heart. She would never forget. She would never forgive. They didn't see mermaids as people. They saw them as product. The hunters were not just fishermen with old nets. They were part of a business, a chain, a system. They lived in small coastal towns, poor places, where fishing was failing and money was tight. They told themselves they had no choice. But the truth was, they made more money hunting mermaids than they ever did with fish. They sold the tails first. Mermaid tails were the most valuable part, exotic meat, delicate and sweet, they said. Chefs in secret restaurants paid huge sums to serve it to rich customers. They cut the fins and dried them like fish fins for soups. Expensive. Rare. They took the eyes, believed to bring luck or magic. Sold in glass jars in black markets. They carved the heads for charms. Made necklaces from the teeth. Some believed it kept away storms. Others simply wanted them as trophies. Nothing was wasted. They packed the flesh in crates of ice and loaded them onto trucks. Drivers were paid not to ask questions. They sold to city restaurants, secret kitchens, rich people who bragged they had tasted the forbidden. Some buyers were from far away, other countries. The money traveled back down the chain, to the men in the boats, to the middlemen, to the bosses who organized the hunts and paid for new nets. They even funded witch doctors to create enchanted nets, nets that were heavy but quick, nets that closed faster than a mermaid could swim. They justified it all. They're just animals. They're not human. Someone else would do it if we didn't. And so the trade grew. The men drank and laughed on their boats at night, dividing up gold and coins. They fixed their nets and sharpened their blades. They sang songs to drown out the screams. They had become very good at ignoring the crying. Beneath ocean, the mermaids thought they could hide in the deep. But even the deep wasn't safe. For years, humans had used charms given to them by dark priests and greedy witch doctors. Charms that let them track mermaids by the glow of their scales. Nets that tightened with magic, too fast to escape. Harpoons that always found their mark. It didn't matter how far the mermaids fled. The humans followed. They had learned to hunt them like animals. Because of this, most mermaid children did not grow up with their parents. Some lost their mothers to the nets before they could even speak. Others watched fathers dragged away in chains. The lucky ones were taken away young, smuggled deep into trenches by desperate elders who split families apart just to keep someone alive. When they gathered, there were many orphans. Children asked why they didn't have parents. Mothers wept quietly in the shadows for the babies they'd lost. They lived like wanderers now, always moving, never safe. They taught their young to be silent, to hide at the first shadow overhead, to never trust the surface. They braided their hair in mourning. They wore dark colors to blend with the deep. They slept lightly, waking at the slightest sound. Every day felt like it could be the last. They remembered the old days only in whispers. Stories about singing in moonlight, dancing in clear lagoons, playing near humans for fun. But those days were gone. Now the ocean felt cold, empty. And among them was one girl. A girl who had seen her own mother killed in a net. Who had watched her sisters carved up like fish. She had been a baby when she escaped. Now she was older. She heard the elders tell the little ones to be good, to be quiet, to accept their fate. She listened to the crying at night in the caves. She saw the fear in every mermaid's eyes. And she carried that fear. But inside it, she felt something else growing. Anger. A promise. Her name was Nkairu. It meant the future is greater. But these days, no one believed in a future at all. One morning, the cave shook with a terrible sound. Booming. Crashing. She felt it in her bones before she heard the screams in the water. She rushed to the cave entrance with the others. Outside was chaos. The scouts, brave mermaids and mermen who had gone out at dawn to look for food, were trapped. The humans were waiting. Their ship loomed above the water, lanterns burning like angry eyes. And the net was glowing with red symbols, swirling and pulsing with dark magic. It dropped with unnatural speed, wrapping around the scouts in seconds. She watched strong mermen fight, tails thrashing, scales tearing. Blood darkened the water. Mothers screamed for their sons. The enchanted ropes bit into them and yanked them upward. Nkairu could see their faces, twisted in fear and pain. On the deck, the humans roared with laughter. She heard their pleading as they were thrown down. Blades flashed in the lantern light. Inside the cave, no one moved. No one even breathed. They huddled deep in the shadows. Some mothers pressed their children's faces into their chests so they wouldn't see. Others just cried quietly. Nkairu felt sick. But she couldn't look away. When the ship finally sailed away, the water was dark with blood. Silence fell in the cave like a stone. No one spoke. No one planned. Because they all knew they would go hungry. There were fewer hunters now. Less food. And anyone who dared to leave might not come back. Far away on the ship, the humans laughed. One spat into the sea. Haven't seen any mermaids in days, he said. The other grinned. Don't worry. They'll come out. They'll starve in those holes. When they crawl out for food, they'll swim right into our juju net. They clinked their cups together. We'll finish them all. Back in the cave, it has been days, no one ate. No one spoke. Nkairu looked around at the children with hollow eyes. Mothers who couldn't even cry anymore. She felt the fire in her chest. We can't keep hiding, she said, voice shaking. No one answered. If we stay here, we'll starve. If we leave, we get caught. Are we just waiting to die? She turned to the elders. This isn't living. It's waiting for death. Silence. Some mothers held their children tighter. I'm going to the ancestral lands, she said. Gasps filled the cave. It's too far, someone whispered. It's dangerous, another said. The currents will swallow you, an elder warned. Nkairu shook her head. They say there's old magic there. Magic that belongs to us. Magic the humans fear. An old mermaid with sea-grey hair spoke softly. Many have tried. Few return. Nkairu didn't blink. Then I'll be one of the few. They gathered around her. Some prayed. One mother pressed a small shell into her palm. For luck, she whispered. The elder laid a trembling hand on her head. Go with the ancestors, Nkairu. May they guide you. Her heart pounded. She was scared. But she was ready. With one last look at the shivering children, she turned and swam into the dark. The water grew colder. Darker. Strange shapes drifted through the trenches. The currents tugged at her, trying to pull her off course. Sharp coral cut her arms and tail. She remembered her mother's last scream. Her sister's blood. She kept going. She would not stop. Then, there it was. A glow in the distance. For a heartbeat she hoped it was the ancestral lands calling her. But the glow turned red. Symbols flickered. It was the humans' net. They had set it even here. It snapped shut around her with unnatural speed. She screamed, thrashing. The ropes burned her skin. She felt them tightening around her chest. She couldn't breathe. The symbols glowed hotter, feeding on her fear. She thought she would die. But then a roar filled the trench. A massive wave crashed through, wild and alive. The current twisted like a living thing, slamming into the net. The symbols fizzled. The ropes snapped. Nkairu was hurled free, gasping in the dark. Silence fell. She floated, shaking. She felt the ocean quiet around her. It was as if something deep, old, and watching had saved her. She wiped her tears. She turned toward the black water ahead. Thank you, she whispered to the sea. Then she kept swimming. Toward the ancestral land. Toward hope. She drifted for hours, maybe days. The ocean was endless black, silent but for her own rasping breaths. Her body ached where the net had burned her. Salt stung the cuts on her arms and tail. But she would not stop. She kept swimming. Because she could see them in her mind, the children in the cave, too scared to cry. The mothers who didn't even hope anymore. She couldn't let them starve in the dark. She had promised. Finally, she felt a change in the water. The cold currents grew strangely warm. The darkness lifted to a pale, shimmering glow. She swam into an ancient trench where the walls were carved with old symbols. Shapes of mermaids with arms outstretched. Eyes closed in peace. She slowed, awed. No one had come here in generations. The elders spoke of this place in whispers, the ancestral lands. A place of old magic. A place that remembered. As she passed the carvings, the glow brightened. Faint voices seemed to whisper through the water. She couldn't make out the words, but she felt them. Her heart pounded. Was it the ancestors? She pressed on. At last she came to a huge underwater cavern. Stalactites of coral and crystal dripped from the ceiling. The floor was covered in white sand, like bone. In the center was a great statue. A mermaid queen with a crown of shells and coral. Her eyes were closed, but tears were carved on her cheeks. Nkairu floated before it, shaking. Please, she whispered. I don't know what to do. My people are dying. The humans hunt us like fish. The children don't even know how to hope. Her voice broke. I watched them kill my mother, my sisters. I've been running all my life. I don't want to run anymore. She clenched her fists. Tell me how to fight them. The water grew deathly still. Then the statue's eyes seemed to glow. Not opening, but burning with inner light. A voice filled the cavern. It wasn't words exactly, more like feelings, memories. She saw mermaids long ago, singing in the moonlight, dancing in crystal lagoons. Children playing at the surface with laughing humans. Then she saw flames, nets, blades, humans shouting with greed. She felt the rage of generations, the despair, the fear. But beneath it all was something else. Power. A promise that the sea itself would always protect its children if they were brave enough to claim it. The voice pressed into her mind. You must remind the ocean of us. You must wake it. You must make them fear the sea again. Nkairu felt tears streaming down her face. Her tail flickered with faint light. She felt something ancient slip into her heart. She felt her cuts burn and close. Her eyes changed color, glowing faintly in the dark. When she opened her mouth to breathe, the water itself seemed to move with her. She understood. She wasn't meant to keep hiding. She was meant to make them pay. She pressed her forehead to the statue. Thank you, she whispered. The glow faded. The cavern went silent. But she felt different. Stronger. Not just for herself. For every child who never knew their parents. For every mother who died begging for mercy. For every mermaid and merman who had ever felt fear. Nkairu turned and swam out of the cavern. The water parted for her. It was time to go home. Nkairu left the ancestral cavern with her eyes burning like twin stars in the dark. The ocean moved with her. She didn't swim slowly now. She charged. The water churned around her like a living thing. Currents bent and twisted at her command. Lightning crackled in the deep. She went straight to the traps. The humans' enchanted nets. They glowed red with hateful magic, ready to swallow any mermaid who dared to feed. Nkairu didn't hesitate. She stretched out her hands. The ocean roared. Waves slammed into the nets. The cymbals sparked, screaming, and tore apart like old cloth. Metal weights cracked and sank into the trenches. Ropes burned and dissolved. The magic died in the water, black smoke coiling away. She didn't stop. She surged upward, breaking from the depths in a spiral of churning foam. The humans' ship was there. Their torches and lanterns flickered in the night air. They turned, wide-eyed in terror as she rose from the water like a goddess of vengeance. For one heartbeat, they simply stared. Then they shouted in panic. There! Throw the net! Red symbols flared in the air. They chanted, old words meant to bind and kill. The net flew toward her, seething with cursed light. Nkairu raised her hands. The ocean obeyed. A wall of water exploded upward, slamming the net back into the ship. Wood shattered. Men screamed. She flicked her fingers. Currents twisted and snapped the net apart like paper. The magic in it sparked once, pitifully, and died. The humans tried to run. Some leapt overboard. Others scrabbled at ropes and sails, cutting themselves in fear. Nkairu's eyes glowed in the dark. She let the waves slap at the ship, tearing it to pieces plank by plank. But she spared the men who fled. She wanted them to remember. She wanted them to tell everyone, that the sea was no longer theirs to hunt. When the last of them fled screaming into the night, the ocean fell quiet. Nkairu hovered in the water. The glow in her eyes dimmed. She breathed. She turned. And she swam for home. The cave was silent when she arrived. Bodies floated near the entrance. Some hadn't survived the hunger. Their faces were peaceful now, but empty. The elders wept. The children were thin, too weak to speak. But when they saw her, they tried to speak. Eyes went wide. Whispers spread through the cave. She was back. Alive. Glowing. Strong. Nkairu swam to them. She didn't smile. She couldn't, not for the ones they lost. But she reached out her hands. And they took them. weak fingers in hers. One child buried his face in her arm and sobbed. An elder laid a trembling hand on her shoulder. "You came back," the old woman whispered. Nkairu nodded. "I did." Her voice was quiet, but the water seemed to carry it to every corner of the cave. "They won't hurt us again." They didn't cheer. Not yet. They were too tired, too sad. But they sat up straighter. They looked at her with hope. And for the first time in so long, they believed. They would mourn their dead. They would bury them in the deep, with songs and prayers. But they would also eat, swim, laugh again, live. Because the ocean was theirs. And anyone who came to hunt them would learn fear. Nkairu looked out at the sea, black, endless, silent, but waiting. She narrowed her eyes, and the water seemed to bow to her will. She would make them pay, and her people would never be prey again.